Hello and welcome to the Ministry Shift. And in a change to our schedule plans, today we are discussing relationships. And to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by four Lichfield ministers. They are Adrian.
Hello, I'm Adrian Stone. I'm the Vicar of Trentham.
Good to see you, Adrian. Steph.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Couvela and I'm the Anglican chaplain at Keele University.
And this is your first show, Steph, so extra special welcome to you. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily and I'm the Vicar of St John's Church in the Pleck and Bescot.
And last but not least, Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia and I'm Vicar in Purton, which is in the west of Wolverhampton.
Welcome to you all. Well, we're now in the throes of our third lockdown, and once again, we're largely unable to live, work, and minister in shared spaces. The effect of this lockdown on the relationships that we see and the relationships that we minister to is profound. Meeting structures have changed, body language is lost, and so much gathering is online. So the casual aside is gone and the affectionate pat on the shoulder seems like a distant memory. And this has probably got a fraying effect on the relationships. It's certainly changing and perhaps getting harder as well. So my question, and it's to you, Adrian, first of all, is if doing relationships is harder, what are you noticing around you and how do you find yourself responding?
Thanks, Simon. I definitely think people are struggling more this lockdown than they have done in the previous ones. And I've noticed that within my leadership team here, as much as with our congregation and our small group structures and all of that. And I think we've just noticed that we have to be a bit more intentional about our relationships because it's so easy for weeks to go by without actually communicating with some folks. And particularly, I was with our pastoral care team this morning thinking about those who are unable to connect on the Zoom, and because we're not open church at the moment, how are we going to do that? There's about 100 people who we need to be able to connect with in some way, and we're thinking, what new structures might we do? We've got to be intentional about it, otherwise the relationships will fall away.
Mm-hmm. Steph, does that intentionality of relationships speak to you where you are?
Oh, definitely, yes. There's a real need to be very purposeful in the way that we maintain those relationships. I think for us at the university, we have a huge advantage in that everybody, whether they like it or not, is connected to tech. We're using Microsoft Teams. All the students use it for their lectures. All the staff are using it. So therefore, everybody that I might want to connect to, almost everybody, we have a small non-student community that worship with us on a Sunday, and some of them are not so tech savvy, but virtually everyone I would like to be in touch with is able to use that kind of tech. And in many ways, I found it hugely advantageous that I'm able to meet with people more readily and more easily. They can kind of slip into meetings with me when they're working from home, where they maybe would feel a bit more self-conscious about coming to the chapel or meeting up with me in one of the sort of coffee places or whatever. So there has been some huge advantages, but obviously a lot of loss as well in terms of the informal contacts.
Mm-hmm. Emily, what do you think this time is doing to the relationships that you look out and see?
I think my context, it's hard because very few people are online. And I do think people find it hard and find it lonely. And I think I'm torn between a mixture of thinking something is better than nothing, even if it's just sending a letter out to the community. It's something and it's contact and it's a way of saying, I'm thinking of you. But then I also feel torn between that kind of guilt that I think just can weigh you down with everything you would like to be doing to reach out to people, and knowing that actually it's not possible to do everything I would like to. So it's that kind of trying to do something, even if it's small, but knowing can't do everything that it's possible to do.
Gosh. Well, relationships without guilt at a time that seems to kind of require a little bit extra. Julia, does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about how folks who are naturally more introverted, I think coupled with the fact it's January and the world wants to hibernate, it feels like folks who are sort of more in that place have withdrawn even more. And for some people, that's fine. They're quite happy becoming not going out at all. And actually, I was talking to my leadership team today, and one of them was saying, actually, I'm not sure I want to go out and see people at all. Which she was slightly worried for herself in that. But then on the other end, those who are more extroverted struggle with lockdown in a different way. I mean, I think they can also, because they get low, end up becoming really lethargic, or the opposite, where they're getting so frustrated that relationships in the home are really fracturing because they're so short-tempered and struggling. And I think for me, like listening to people, you know, as Emily said, there's only so much we can do, but it's, for me, I've just been aware of the people that I haven't had any contact with. So, you know, the people that shout loudest are the people that you tend to hear. So for me, it's every week with my leadership team. We have a Zoom leadership team every week, and we just sort of run through pastoral contact that we've had with people and just flag up names where we think, actually, we haven't had any, whether it's a phone call, an email, you know, happen to pass them in the street, you know, whatever kind of contact that is. Actually, there are people that are slipping through the net if we're not careful. So it's trying to just have that safety net that says we've not, you know, you're not forgotten, and making extra effort for those who have really withdrawn. Yeah.
And so there's something about overseeing relationships and maintaining them, making sure that they're still there. Is there something about what makes for good relationships within our community as well, the quality of relationships?
I'll pick up on that a little and just say one of the things we're thinking about here is about how if we don't focus and be intentional about this sort of stuff, it does slip away. And we're using the term entropy as a kind of a way of thinking about our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. And it strikes me that there are so many different ways that if we don't water these relationships, so I don't know about you, but I talk about on our marriage services quite often, you know, the grass is greener on the other side. No, that's not true. The grass is greener where you water it. And that's true of all relationships. And actually, we need to somehow find a way of watering and nourishing these relationships at this time. Otherwise, they will just float away and cool down and lose that focus.
I love that idea that, you know, something is either growing or it's withering. It's probably not staying static. Emily, does that speak to your situation at all?
Yeah, it does. I think that's a really beautiful image of watering those relationships. And I think one of the ways I've noticed that I've been trying to do that is by praying for people. Actually, you may not be able to kind of contact and see each other in the way that you would like. And sometimes I get lots and lots of messages of people asking for prayer for certain things. And actually, just taking that time, often I light a candle and just kind of offer those relationships and those people to God, and trusting that in that intentionality of praying for people, something there is going to be nurtured and growth will happen.
Steph, what's your prayer for the kinds of relationship that you see around you, like largely online, as you say, but still present?
Oh gosh. I think there is something about as ministers, as clergy, particularly just doing what we can and not allowing that voice of kind of self-condemnation to come in, because we're all finding it incredibly hard. We're all reinventing everything all of the time. And it's easy to sort of worry about what we're not doing, but to fail to see what we are. So I suppose for me, for example, one of the real gifts of this time has been a much greater connectedness with staff at Keele. one of the things that we're constantly trying to communicate is we're the chaplains for the staff as well as the students, but because we're part of the student support team, we tend to be seen as being part of that. And for me, it's been a wonderful opportunity that I've now got several members of staff with that I meet with from time to time, that we've picked up. We've been doing some wellbeing sessions as a chaplaincy team, and that's just opened opportunities that weren't previously there, and hopefully will continue after, you know, life returns to something a little more normal. So I think looking for the positives, looking for the things that are working, and giving ourselves a bit of slack as well, and knowing that we're all running on empty at the moment, not just those in ministry but everyone, and God is good and gracious and continues to work despite the weaknesses and limitations both of us and our situation.
And it's amazing how God sort of pushed us into new understandings of our ministry, isn't it, in the last year, really?
Definitely.
Julia, I hope it's okay to kind of land this question on you, but obviously one of the ways that our faith speaks to us about the quality of relationship is through the Eucharist, and through a regular pattern of confession and reconciliation and unity. Not all churches practice that week by week, but most of us are familiar with it. And that's something that we're pretty much unable to enter into at the moment. Do you think that's affecting the life of your community, the relationships in it at the moment?
I think it is to some extent. Where I minister is relatively low church. However, when we were meeting, we've also closed, but when we were meeting, there was a core group who came every Sunday to receive the sacrament. And so for those folks, obviously it's important, and for myself personally. So I think there is a grief there, and there is a loss there that needs to be heard and given space for and expressed. And I know for me, with our leadership team, with the PCC, we've tried to look at, you know, how do we be church together in this time? I know that's what everyone's been looking at, and often come back to that, you know, that sort of Acts 2 verse about, you know, prayer and the apostles' teaching, breaking of bread and fellowship, and 2 out of 4 of those are really difficult right now, fellowship and breaking of bread. And I think we have to just kind of we have to be as creative as we can. Things like with fellowship, for example, in whatever way we can, as we've been talking about relationships. But I've also been very much thinking about, as well as grieving what we can't have, and obviously that the hope of something returning at some point. At the same time, we have the gift of now, and we need to, my encouragement is to try and help people and myself see how we can connect spiritually with each other and with God in the here and now. And so the idea of trying to help people practice the presence of God together in different ways, even if we can't have the sacrament together, and not just be living so much for the future that we miss now. I don't know if that gets anywhere towards anything, Simon.
Oh, it's really powerful. And before we came on, we were talking about relationship with God. And I was saying, no, this episode's about relationship with people. It's always about relationship with God, isn't it? And we've heard that in this episode, just that how this time has been an entering into, you know, almost a new relationship with God, or certainly being called back into attention to that. Any final thoughts on the Eucharist and relationships from Steph, Adrian, or Emily?
I think I'll just say one of the other relationships that we're thinking about and being conscious of are the new faces that we're seeing, and we're only seeing them online and have no other kind of way of connecting with them at the moment. And how do we change the kind of connection into relationship, and how do then we change relationship into discipleship, and all of that? How can we part of being intentional about that? So it's another area to focus on in our relationship, really.
Adrian, Julia, Emily, and Steph, thanks so much for joining us this week for the Ministry Shift, and thank you for all of you who've joined us to watch the show. Next week, we're looking at new communications and how they're changing the life of the diocese. Our training, our communications, even our governance. Where are those things headed in a Zoom world? So until then, don't forget to share this show with anyone who you think might benefit about thinking about ministering to relationships. Wish you a blessed week, and I hope that you'll join us again next week. Goodbye.